Good morning, Ram Nation. We are back with another edition of DNVR Rams Live. We are not in the Toyota Lounge. However, we are driven by Front Range Toyota stores. Toyota, the official vehicle of DNVR. I caught up with Bo Brock earlier this week of PHNX Cardinals. We kind of talked about Trey McBride and just his breakout season, which was obviously a ton of fun to watch this past year. It's not a position that historically has been very successful for Arizona. I mean, he's arguably maybe the best tight end already since the franchise moved over from St. Louis. Jackie Smith has a strong argument as the best in organizational history, but obviously, when the team moves, that gets kind of complicated. I just picked Bo's brain on all kinds of stuff, like what he expects Trey's role to be in the offense moving forward. With more weapons in the offense, how does that impact his target load? Whether he's, a pillar of the franchise moving forward to build around. Obviously, you've got Kyler Murray, and then you bring in Marvin Harrison Jr. But Trey, I think he's kind of played his way into that conversation as at least a top 5 tight end in football. When you look at his production over the second half of that last season, obviously he's going to have to continue it and replicate it moving forward. But he's really catching people's attention in a major way. I saw Mina Kimes recently went on the PHNX Cardinals show, and she was just raving about him. So make sure you're following all things they do all season. It's a really fun interview. We're going to get to that here in just a second. Yesterday was crazy. We had the live show in the morning talking about Nick Clifford coming back, which was obviously huge news for CSU men's basketball. If you missed that one, make sure you go back and watch it later on. It was fun. I had Dre on with me. Definitely a little bit unexpected. I just, based on everything we had heard over the pre-draft process, was that he was kind of dead set on going pro. Workouts in the combine didn't go exactly like he was hoping. Now he can kind of come back, be in that draft radar for an entire season, be the face of CSU men's basketball. And honestly, it feels like the team could be pretty good. So I'm excited to see how that pans out. Make sure you go check that out. But then there was, transfer news. CSU football picked up a defensive tackle out of Utah State. John Weber was named full-time athletic director at CSU. All of this within a couple of hours. I'm in a meeting, then I get a notification that the Rocky Mountain Showdown officially has a kickoff time set. It gets the prime time treatment, 5:30 p.m. Mountain Time on CBS. That's as big as it gets. It's such a huge opportunity for college football in this state. Really, really exciting. This is only the 4th time in the last 50 years that the game is in Fort Collins. Obviously, was supposed to be there in 2020. CSU hasn't beaten CU overall since 2014. Haven't beat them on campus since 1955, but haven't had a ton of opportunities. I think only 5 chances since then. Obviously, it's fair to point out that this game is getting a ton of national interest because of Deion Sanders being the head coach at CU. That makes sense. Without him, this game isn't going to be prime time on CBS. It's still going to get a national audience. It probably would have been on FS1 or something in traditional years. But if you're CSU, you don't really care. And honestly, the truth is, if CSU isn't as competitive as they were in that game last season, this game's not going to be on CBS at 5:30. If they thought it was going to be a blowout, they wouldn't put it on CBS in the primetime slot. That's just the reality of the situation. Would it have been prominently featured? Without a doubt. Even maybe on a 8 p.m. kickoff on Fox or something like that would not have been shocking. But for this to end up in Fort Collins, really exciting. We got a ton of Buffs trolls in the Toyota chat. Nice to see you tuning in. Nice to see you, thinking about CSU. I know you guys love me so much over there. I'm interested to see kind of what the crowd looks like for sure. I will say to the people in Boulder that think it's going to be 80% Buffs fans, you're going to be sadly mistaken. That's only a 37,000 stadium seats. I got tongue-tied there. There's only 37,000 seats in the stadium. About 30 of that's going to go to season ticket holders and students. So that's just the reality of it. When it was in Fort Collins in '96, it was not, a takeover either. And that's when the Buffs were a top 10 team nationally. That's, the kind of post, it's the heart of the McCartney era. So just saying, a little bit of reality. I'm interested to see if game day will come to Fort Collins again. Looking at kind of the week 3 schedule, Wisconsin hosts Bama. That's a 10 a.m. Kickoff. Maybe they go there. I mean, Wisconsin's obviously sweet. That's, you got the Big Ten, SEC. That would probably be the biggest competition, would be my guess. Florida also hosts A&M. I mean, Kentucky, Georgia, not really competition. I mean, there is also Oregon, Oregon State, Washington, Washington State, and Utah, Utah State. So a ton of in-state rivalry games going on in week 3, which is a ton of fun to see. I'm really excited. This is a big time opportunity for CSU. If you're just joining, like I said at the beginning, no doubt that Deion being the head coach of the Buffs is a big factor in why this game is getting so prominently featured. That said, the Rams punching up essentially and having a double overtime thriller. Frankly, they should have won the game, kind of let it slip through their fingers. That's a big factor as well. And now you have a lot of intrigue nationally. You want to see, is this game going to be as exciting as it was a year ago? Is it going to live up to the hype? We've got people like Michael Vick tweeting about the showdown in May, which is just absolutely wild. It's cool. Really exciting time to be a college football fan in the state of Colorado. And cannot wait for all you Buffs fans in the Toyota chat to get humbled when you see what that crowd ultimately ends up being in reality. We got the interview coming up with Brack of PHNX Cardinals here in just a second. Do want to shout out the friends over at Toyota. Toyota trucks have always been a part of Toyota's DNA for generations. They built durable legends destined for greatness, perfect for Colorado. Whether you're conquering off-road trails or hauling the way to the world, there's a Toyota truck that's just right for you. Like the all-new 2024 Tacoma or the iconic 2024 Land Cruiser coming this spring. They offer 17 models with all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive like the Epic 4Runner. Toyota offers more low and zero-emission vehicles combined than any other automaker to give customers numerous choices to reduce their carbon footprint. They've got 16 different hybrids to choose from, like the Tundra iForce Max hybrid truck. Not to be outdone, though, Toyota SUVs take command on the road and on the trail. You can explore the road less traveled without sacrificing smooth city rides in SUVs like the RAV4 and Grand Highlander. Toyota is a proud partner of CSU Athletics and the official vehicle of DNVR. I also want to shout out Circa Sportsbook. Circa Sportsbook is as good as it gets. They've got tight money line splits. When other sportsbooks, they might give you something like minus 115, minus 120 splits. You're going to get better odds over at Circa. You're going to get something like minus 10. They don't limit you based on your winnings. Every player has the same limits, unlike other books who do limit player winnings. There's real people behind the Circa Sports brand who resolve issues in a timely fashion, unlike those other books who use chatbots. Download the app at circasports.com. Circa Sports bets can be made while physically located in the state of Colorado. Must be 21 or older. All rights reserved. Circa Sports Colorado encourages you to gamble responsibly. Gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER or visit problemgamblingcolorado.org. All right, we're going to play that interview here with Brack of PHNX Cardinals. We're talking Trey McBride, his breakout season this past fall, kind of what his role is going to look like with the Cardinals moving forward. Should Arizona invest in a long-term contract extension in him, and kind of who are some of the other players you have to keep an eye on in that conversation. Really enjoyable interview. You guys are going to dig it. So here that is Brack, PHNX Cardinals. We're talking all things Trey McBride. At Brack of PHNX, our sister outlet, brother outlet. I don't know how you want to phrase it. We're all one big happy family in ALLCITY. How's your summer going, man? I know it can get kind of chaotic in OTAs.
Yeah, it's starting to heat up out here in the desert. We don't have like the beautiful summers that you guys are fortunate enough having in Colorado. It's kind of our season where we retreat indoors. But OTAs, man, things starting to heat up. It's pretty incredible to see the collection of talent that General Manager Monty Ossenford has been able to kind of put together in just a short time since taking over for Steve Keim. And, Kyler Murray, along with Marvin Harrison Jr. now, and to go with a guy like Trey McBride, who broke out last year, who I know you want to talk about. It's really incredible just the work that they've put in and how they've been able to kind of revamp this roster in just, a calendar year.
I think that's a good place to start. I mean, obviously, I'm going to largely pick your brain about Trey because we're all obsessed with him out here in Fort Collins. But I think that is a good place to start, is kind of it seems like the Cardinals are in the midst of an ascension here. Like you've had, a couple of struggle years. I know Kyler had some injuries and some
Mhm.
factors that go into that, coaching changes. Like there's so many different things you can look at. But it seems like the feeling, at least kind of just following you guys and like kind of following Cardinals fans, is that like we're close. I don't know if the expectation is like Super Bowl or bust or anything like
Yeah.
that. But what is the expectation kind of going into this season, and what are the levels of optimism, kind of amongst, is it Cardinals Nation?
It's the Bird Gang. It's the Red
Bird Gang.
Sea. Yeah, more. I don't know if we're officially in a nation yet. If you
You're
got to
building.
grow the. Yeah, exactly. And exactly. So is the team. And I liked how you said there's levels to this. Like there's levels to a rebuild. There's levels to the team kind of becoming relevant again. I mean, they were pretty much in NFL purgatory for the last couple of years, back to back 4-13 seasons, but a different look at that. Like 4-13 in 2022 look very different than 4-13 in
Totally.
2023, where there was I think they finished the season with a ton of optimism. And I think that the organization, I think the fan base was a little bummed out that they couldn't continue to watch this team climb and trend in the right direction. But their head coach Jonathan Gannon, he'll tell you he doesn't believe in momentum, but the fan base is buying into it. Like the culture has changed. Like the end of 2022, this was a rudderless ship. As far as the architect, it was Steve Keim who, unceremoniously resigned, didn't know how to truly roster build for a consistent winner. And then Cliff Kingsbury was overmatched from the very jump, going from a failed Big 12 coach, under 500 at Texas Tech, to one of the, was like as far as rise to head coaching position, it'd be tough to find. You'd be hard pressed to find in the NFL history. So, for them to get kind of adults in the room, not only in the front office but on the coaching staff, it's really turned things around as far as just the true culture of this organization. And they embrace Kyler Murray, their number one asset that they kind of kept from the previous regime. And they bet right. And Kyler Murray's paying that off going into this first full offseason where he's not rehabbing a significant knee injury. I think that they're seeing that Kyler Murray's taken steps as far as leadership. And then what he's capable of athletic wise. I mean, a guy who's drafted in the top 10 in 2 professional sports leagues. So, and he's finally has the infrastructure around him where I think he can really kind of take his game to the next level. So there's a ton of excitement around this team. Still a lot of work to be done roster wise and talent wise and putting it together, especially on the defensive side of the football. But offensively, I think they're going to be able to hang with pretty much anybody in this league.
You guys, by the end of the season, I feel like we're the fun like red zone team to turn on in
Right.
the afternoon window. Like I just think about like the Pittsburgh game and some of those
Right.
moments. And I mean, obviously, I'm biased. Like I'm a Trey McBride guy. He was an NIL athlete of ours. I think technically speaking, the first collegiate NIL athlete to like do a media deal in the entire state of Colorado. So like we're all very much rooting for him. But before we come back to this season, and I want to get into expectations again, like I want to go back to draft night when they take him with the 55th overall pick, I think it
Correct.
was in
Yeah.
the second round. What was your instant reaction? Because I could tell, like talking with some of the PHNX guys, they were like, well, we know he's a stud. Like, they saw him at the Senior Bowl. Like, but I think the reaction was kind of like, really, a tight end in the second round? Like, what
Yeah.
was your opinion then? And has it shifted, I guess, these last couple of years?
It's interesting because we had a similar moment this past draft, the Arizona Cardinals, with the new general manager, Monty Ossenfort, who leans on premium positions, and tight ends, as important as it is in this league, this day and age, it's not a premium position, right? And they took a top 100 pick, Tip Ryman, the best blocking tight end in this draft, 82nd overall. And we were kind of taken back by that because we thought that this was a team that really wanted to emphasize premium positions. And it was similar with Trey back in, what was it, 2022, that draft, where, you saw the gaudy numbers. You saw that, especially in a league of mismatches, that this was a guy that you could, once he gets up to speed on the pro level, is going to be able to exploit really anybody on defense. But at the time, it wasn't a need. I mean, he was their top draft pick that year. They traded their first round pick for Hollywood Brown. He was the first guy off the board for the Arizona Cardinals. And Zach Ertz had just come over and started putting up numbers that this organization hadn't seen since moving to the desert. So it was a little like we're just confused with, and you get lost in it, and it's kind of more like football nerds and analytic kind of people who rely on, and that's who I am. Like the value, right? But at the end of the day, Trey McBride proved us to be all wrong and look foolish with our immediate knee-jerk reaction, because he's turned into such a fantastic player for the Arizona Cardinals. But originally, I mean, the PHNX Cardinals show, like the receipts on that are pretty embarrassing. So, I believe we talked right after it and we were trying to pick up the pieces, but just like taking with your top pick, a position that you felt like you had already, settled in a roster that had so many more needs. It was a little puzzling.
I mean, I get the whole process. I do the draft pod for us. So, I mean, we're making these arguments all the time. Like, it's like, I get it. Like, I love the guy. We talked a bunch with like the Raiders and some of the tight ends they've took the last couple of years. It's like, it's not that I don't like Mayer. It's not that I don't think that Bowers is going to be a stud. It's the positional value and all that kind of stuff that factors into these conversations. But like, I'm glad you mentioned Zach Ertz, because I mean, I'm not sure if he gets hurt last year. Like, I don't know if Trey has the breakout season, because he's not even starting till halfway through. And even then he still goes on to basically break like every, outside of Jackie Smith and St. Louis, every like franchise record for tight ends in Arizona.
It was the tight end position, especially since moving from St. Louis to Arizona, was like the most
shockingly
position.
Bad.
So bad. Like the big breakout game he had against Atlanta, and he had a big game before that, where he approached becoming the first tight end since like 1989 to have a 100-yard receiving game. Like it was when Ertz came over. He came over and played 11 games for the Cardinals, and he broke almost every receiving record from a tight end since they moved to the desert. But you're right. I mean, they get Zach Ertz, and then Zach Ertz tears his ACL the previous season. But there was a respect factor with Ertz. Jonathan Gannon was the defensive coordinator in Philadelphia while Ertz was at the end of his Eagles career. And I think that they wanted to pay the respect to Ertz, but he came back and he kind of got to fly off its own timeline. I don't know if he was ready, but he truly was standing in the way of this second-year player that was poised to break out. But I also think it kind of gave Trey McBride a little bit of an advantage to just prepare and really get ready for his second season. And as much as I think if Trey McBride is inserted in the lineup, though, week 1 against Washington, Zach Ertz had a brutal drop that would have been a sure touchdown. That would have been a difference maker. And it's unfortunate, but at the same time, in a season that really wasn't judged on win and losses, like that they were still able to kind of make the tough decision on Zach Ertz, move on from him. He ended up was eventually released, and then they leaned on Trey McBride, who just absolutely did everything, and I think more than the previous front office even imagined for Trey McBride to become.
It's one of those where it's like, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I remember like the skepticism coming from you guys, and I get it because I understand the positional value, but obviously just having gotten to know him so well and watching it up and close, I'm like, there is no way that this guy's game does not translate. Like, I know it's Mountain West Corners, but I'm like, go watch him score a 50-yard touchdown against Florida. Like, there hasn't been anybody that's been able to contain him since he's been here. It's just been cool to see, but I also think, to expect him to be like the Mackey Award winner right off the bat would have been foolish. Like, tight end's a position in the NFL that kind of takes a couple of years typically to branch out. Even when you look at like the Gronks and the Kelseys of the world, they weren't like hitting the ground running as rookies. But now that we're kind of going into year 3, like, how has Trey changed this offense, or like the dynamic of this offense? Because it seems like him and Kyler really have good chemistry.
Well, I mean, I think he took it from the Jurassic era, maybe being more friendly, like the Dark Ages, to a modern day offense, right? They had lacked that tight end playmaker, that mismatch that you can put on linebackers and safeties and exploit. But what Trey is able to do, and what I think the new culture, new Cardinals player can do, is the versatility. Like, the biggest question you have, I think, with any tight end, like if he comes out, like I bring up Tip Ryman, like exceptional blocker, but can he make plays in the passing game? Where Trey was like, You knew this is a playmaker. This is a guy that's going to make plays in the passing attack. But how is he going to be as a blocker? Is he going to embrace that? Trey McBride, I think anytime you talk to him, he wants to be the most well-rounded tight end in the league. Like, he knows what he can do and he can beat any safety in the game. But can he block a linebacker? Can he be a force in the run game? And he's shown that he can be, and that's a game that's a part of his craft that he's continuing to work on. But what he was able to bring with Kyler Murray is that that safety valve, right? Like, and even more some, because they were so depleted at the wide receiver position by the end of last year that just by necessity he had to lean on Trey McBride last year. But he truly has become that guy that even if Trey McBride looks like he's covered, Kyler Murray can throw the ball to him, and more often than not, he's going to come down with it. It was a little rocky, like the very first game. The very first mistake made from this offense involved Kyler Murray and Trey McBride. Like, Kyler Murray came out like gangbusters, looked like the old version of himself. You're like, man, is he even going to show any rust from his significant injury? And then there was a play where Trey McBride needed to sit in coverage, but instead tried to make a play, and Kyler threw it to where he thought, Trey McBride was going to sit down, and it was a pick. And, normally maybe that might disrupt the rapport, but they did the right thing and learned from it. And, Trey McBride's making 2 huge plays down the stretch of that game that turned into the game-winning drive. And you have to love the resiliency and the trust between those two. So Trey McBride is just kind of created, and Kyler Murray gets credit for this too. And just that trust and that rapport that they were able to develop like very early on. And to your point from before, that Trey didn't have the opportunity to get because there was Zach Ertz standing in the way of it.
Every team has like kind of what I consider to be like the pillars of the franchise. And obviously Kyler is going to be in that. You assume that a Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be in that conversation. Mm-hmm. Is Trey McBride, in your opinion, like one of the pillars of the team that you build around moving forward? He's going into year 3 here. Yeah. Like, he's going to be eligible for an extension over the next couple of years. Like, how do you view the next couple of seasons playing out in terms of Trey and his future in Arizona?
I mean, they tore this roster down. Like, you can't really find, like, you see a bunch of first round picks from the previous regime exit, and you see anybody that's left over, and Trey included, but Trey, the talent speaks for itself. But there was a buy-in that he had early on that I think really endeared himself to the new coaching staff. And you look at next offseason, you're right. Like, as soon as the final whistle blows on the 2024 campaign for the Cardinals, I believe that Trey McBride becomes a priority in already negotiating that next contract, right? Because I don't think I think that he would become a franchise tag candidate if he somehow gets all the way to the end of his 4th and final season on his rookie deal. But he is absolutely, as they tore this thing down to the studs, a building block going forward. There's no doubt about it. And what he's able to do, how he can be lunch pail mentality in the run game, but then he can also kind of be like souped up sports car in the passing attack. And that's what you want. That's what you want from your tight end. And I think he's absolutely in there. And they don't have anybody else to really pay in the near future. Like, Kyler Murray's under contract. That extension kicks in this year. They're going to pay him somewhere between $45 and $50 million cap wise for the next couple of years, but they don't really have anybody else to pay. Like, Paris Johnson Jr. is going to be the next guy up after Trey, and he was a draft pick in 2023. Like, he's not going to be. He's got his year 3 coming up, next season, and then he'd be eligible. But there's really nobody else that you have to go and say, hey, we have to negotiate this. So Trey McBride, I think, will become probably the first kind of player during the new front office that they extend and give big money.
We'll get to part 2 of that interview with Bo here in just a second. I'm going to pick his brain on Trey's popularity. We'll get, continue that discussion about kind of how he fits into the Cardinals' future moving forward. We'll also talk a little bit, or I guess I will talk a little bit at the end. I just give some final thoughts on all of this, the discussion with Bo. The big time Rocky Mountain Showdown coming up in Fort Collins. Prime time treatment on CBS. Looking forward to that really exciting moment for college football in this state. I just wanted to take a quick breather there. Shout out to everybody rocking in the Toyota chat. Please keep it, somewhat polite. I don't care if you guys want to go back and forth. It's all good fun. I'm all about the rivalry. I mean, it's neat to see this many people engaged and going back and forth, but no need to be a jerk. If you will, you're going to get kicked. So that's just the reality of the situation. We're going to get to part 2 of that interview here, and then I'll wrap up with some final thoughts, answer some questions for you guys. Shout out to everybody in the Toyota chat.
Is Trey, like amongst Cardinals fans?
Yeah. It's the McBride's maids. That's their official name. And I think it's strong and it's growing. And it's cool because it transcends the fan base, right? Because of what, what he did for fantasy football owners. Like we were talking to Mina Kimes. I hate to name drop on this, but Mina Kimes
it's awesome.
Was like, she felt like she was Bill Belichick because she was in early on Trey McBride and he broke out last year. And she's like, anybody that would listen, she was telling about how she was in early on Trey McBride. So it transcends the fan base. And there haven't been a whole lot of players that did that. Like Kyler Murray, of course. I think, David Johnson 2016 because of his 20 touchdown performance. But like outside of that, DeAndre Hopkins sprinkled in, Larry Fitzgerald. There was always a battle of who, couldn't there be a quarterback to get him the football? Like Trey McBride has emerged as a very rare Arizona Cardinals fantasy football darling. And that does a lot, as far as giving your team a little bit of brand recognition. And I think, fans recognize that when you think of before Marvin Harrison Jr., this new era of Cardinals football, like who you could confidently purchase the jersey of. Like, I don't even know if you could say at this time last year, like you get the number 1 Kyler Murray jersey, as he was coming back from the knee injury, but now you can confidently do that. Trey McBride was one of the few guys to get that 85 jersey. And you're seeing it when you go to games. That people love Trey Day, and that he is absolutely a fan favorite. I think that he loves ball, and he loves being a part of this Cardinals organization, and that shows, it kind of reveals itself to the fan base, and it's something that they can kind of wrap their arms around. One of the few players in a long time that they can do that with.
And I think he's endearing from the sense of like he's just fun to watch because you can tell how much he enjoys playing football. Like you can, when you mentioned the mindset and run blocking, like I never really had any concerns about him in the next level. Yeah, he needed to refine and gain experience, which makes sense. But like he always embraced that mentality at CSU, so I'm not surprised that that's carried over. When you watch him out there, like he's a guy that's gonna talk trash to defenders. He's going to flex after a big catch, but then like at the podium, he's going to come and say all the humble things and the right things. And he's like doing the Wounded Warrior Project. And now you have like the viral video of him sending the autograph jersey to the young kid with same-sex parents. Like he's hitting on every mark right now of like building a solid reputation within a community. And I think it's cool to be in a place like Arizona where I think you have a chance to like, I don't know, like build a more genuine and like meaningful connection with the community around you because you're not in Boston, you're not in New York City, like you're in a Denver and a Phoenix. Like we're really into this, and there's not that much like else. Does that make sense? Like it's not Hollywood,
absolutely.
There's not Broadway. Like this is what we do, sports.
I think that's you're being kind as far as the way you describe it, but there was a need for it. Like there was like this fan base has been craving, players the caliber of Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr., Kyler Murray, that they can kind of latch onto and celebrate. And I think Trey is not he doesn't discount that at all. Like you're absolutely right. Like he loves football, the quiet confidence. There was a funny time this season, like post game, where I think he slipped up and like he like basically said the conversation between him and Kyler Murray in the huddle was like nobody can guard me out here. And he said that much, and you saw it play out on tape in the way that they attacked the poor Atlanta Falcons secondary and that poor safety that they just abused. But like that, it's so easy to root for somebody who's so humble, but so extremely gifted as well. And the Arizona Cardinals having Trey McBride, that video that you mentioned that just kind of released with a young fan who, like Trey McBride, is growing up in a same-sex parent household. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to not like say, is it dusty in here after watching that video? It really was a truly special moment and just a testament to the character of Trey McBride.
He had 106 targets a year ago. That's even not even being a full-time starter. 82 catches, 825 yards. What do you anticipate as far as his like target load in the offense? I mean, you mentioned they were pretty desolate in terms of their receiver options. So I think like naturally, maybe he's not getting 15 targets a week, but I would still assume it's still probably in that like 7 to 10, 11 range per game.
Yeah, I look at these playmakers, and unfortunately, there's one football, and like Trey McBride feasted because out of necessity, like I said last year. I think it's going to be more quality over quantity. He's going to benefit from Marvin Harrison Jr. being out there. I think he's going to benefit from a breakout candidate in his second season, Michael Wilson, who's so impressive. And then you've got, the run, they emphasize the run game. Like they are a run first offense, where James Conner went over the 1,000-yard mark. They drafted Trey Benson. They drafted a blocking tight end. Like, but he is going to benefit when I say quality, like just a lot of open space. I think, boxes are going to stack a little bit. Defenses are going to come up. People are going to maybe look at number 18, Marvin Harrison Jr., and then there's going to be Trey McBride, more open than he's used to being open, making big plays. So I think you're right. Like the target share, 14 and 15 is crazy, right? Those are Kelsey numbers. And as much as I'm like bullish on Trey McBride, continuing off of a breakout campaign, I really do believe, like, I think his catch to target ratio is going to be unbelievable this year, but it's not going to be as gaudy as it was last year. So I think it could be like, if he sees 9 to 10 targets a game, he's going to haul in 8 to 9 catches of those targets.
I want to see him find the end zone a little more. It was kind of a running joke at CSU his senior year. He had like 100+ targets, or 100+ catches, and he had like 2 touchdowns for the entire year. Like he only had 3 touchdowns this year. I've given him crap before, even like, dude, you get all these catches, you have all this production. Like, what's a guy got to do to get a touchdown here and there?
I mean, the Pittsburgh game is a perfect example, though. Like, has he just? I don't mean misutilize it in like a derogatory sense. Like, I'm sure he faced CSU probably just overwhelming, double bracket, whatever. They throw the kitchen sink at making sure Trey McBride didn't beat him, especially in close. But in Pittsburgh, he caught 2 damn touchdowns. One was waved off. I still don't know how that. He was like, "What the hell is that about?" And then he makes the catch at the back of the end zone, like high pointing a ball. And then they go back out, and then he shows his versatility, and he's catching at the front of the end zone, basically boxing out defenders and showing just the diverse way that he can beat you in the red zone. His first career touchdown was something cool. Like it was in the previous offense, Cliff Kingsbury calling it. He was in the backfield. He came out of the backfield and just kind of went out to the flat. So he can do it in a wide array of different ways. And I think he's, like I said, the what he's going to benefit from having Marvin Harrison Jr. having an emphasis on running the football. Like Trey McBride is going to be damn near lethal in the red zone for this team. But like, is he going to approach double-digit tutties? I don't know. I just don't think that there's like, I think he's going to do it and it's going to look easy, but I also don't know if he's going to have, the amount of times like to hit double digits but I still think like 6 to 8 is very doable for Trey McBride.
I think that should kind of be the hope, like going into this year. If he could double his touchdowns, that would be pretty realistic. Like you mentioned, I mean, they're gonna run the ball a lot. You've got more options, so naturally there's just less targets to go around. But I mean, when he was at CSU, they couldn't run the ball to save their life. So like in the red zone, it was just tripling him. And even then, I was like, I would still just throw it to him because their red zone offense was so bad. I was like, 3 shots to Trey, you're probably more likely to get it than what we're currently doing. So
I don't know if he's ever played, and I said this about Kyler Murray, but this goes for guys like Trey McBride as well. Like within an offensive infrastructure with the play calling and then the personnel, where it's been this talented. Like even with the tight ends, like I saw them in practice yesterday, run 13 personnel. You got 3 tight ends on the field, and you got one, your X or Z wide receiver, depending on if they like Michael Wilson or Marvin Harrison Jr. I guess it's going to be MHJ. But when you're looking at 13 personnel and you're in the red zone and they decide to throw the football, Tip Ryman's probably not going to be the guy. And, Elijah Higgins is a converted wide receiver from Stanford, but playing tight end. It's going to be Trey McBride. They're going to look towards Trey McBride to make those plays. So he's going to benefit from that for sure. And I think like when defenses are caught, you're really trying to slow down the run, Trey's going to feast.
Give the CSU fans out there who are trying to follow like everything you guys are doing this fall, like what do you have a typical time that you guys go live and all that? I mean, I'll obviously subscribe PHNX Cardinals, follow on YouTube, on Twitter, on X, follow Bo, all that. But what do you guys got going on?
Thanks, man. Yeah, PHNX_Cardinals. Anytime Trey McBride's at the podium or talking to the media, we're pushing out as much Trey content as possible. He's a good soundbite these days. You guys all know that. We also have clips from practice. He had his practice getup, man. It's phenomenal. I mean, he had these black gloves. He had the short sleeve hoodie underneath his jersey yesterday. His fit was pretty phenomenal yesterday. I'd have to say, as the kids are saying, his aura was pretty unbelievable yesterday at Cardinals OTAs. So we're putting out content, every day, anytime we're out there on the practice field, Trey and his teammates. And then we're talking about it, sights and sounds from practice, projections, upcoming season. I think it's 5:30 Mountain Time. We're live, but you can catch it on replay as well. PHNX Sports on YouTube.
They do a killer job, guys. Make sure you go follow everything they're doing at PHNX. Really follow out everything in the All-City network. But Bo Brack, man, this was a blast. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Anytime, man.
Shout out to our buddy Bo over at PHNX Cardinals. Make sure you guys are locked in, following everything that they do throughout the year. Great coverage. It's funny, we ended up having Trey and David Roddy both end up in PHNX. So if you want to keep up with a couple of next level Rams, just follow the All-City Network. Our sister outlet over there has you covered. Really fun interview. I thought it was interesting to get Bo's perspective on just kind of how Trey's load is going to be impacted slightly by just having more talent at the skill positions. I mean, I think the expectation is that the Cardinals should kind of take a big step forward. They were frisky at the end of last season, one of those fun teams to watch in the late window if you're like tuned into Red Zone and there's only 4 or 5 afternoon games on. Like a couple of the West Coast teams last year were just not fun to watch. The Chargers come to mind. Like it seemed like every afternoon window we would have some really boring Chargers game or I don't know, like Seattle, San Francisco, but it wouldn't be competitive. I'm interested to see. It feels like the future is very bright there in Phoenix, not just because it's 1,000,000 degrees in Arizona in the summer, but because the Cardinals are kind of building something there under Jonathan Gannon. The future for CSU fans in general feels very exciting. You get Neat Clifford coming back, second time in the last 3 years. You've had a guy with legit NBA interest, or I mean, having the option to explore the transfer portal, jump up to a high major, and they've elected to stay at CSU. Will be fun to see if the Rams can push for a third NCAA tournament in the last 4 years. It'd be cool to see them get to the second weekend, maybe compete for a Mountain West championship. Big things happening recruiting-wise. Football, you're going to get a ton of high school visits here in June, so we'll have a lot to talk about over the next couple of months. I'm going to dive more in depth this weekend into some of the most recent transfer additions, so looking forward to kind of getting into some of that. We do have some questions here in the Toyota chat. I had one saved from Lamar 1107 in the Toyota chat. He's got one, is BFN the starter? Yes, without question. 2, with the significant amount of investment in the football department, what is the potential for Rams football? I mean, the potential has always been there. That's the thing. Like it's not like CSU has struggled for a lack of financial investment. I mean, when you look at what the Rams have committed to athletics from a facility standpoint, just from a general investment standpoint with what they're paying coaches and stuff, I mean, they've been taking big swings. They just unfortunately have not had the results. And it's not for lack of talent either. I mean, it's actually kind of depressing if you go back and look at the last decade, how many times CSU arguably had the best offensive or defensive player in the conference. And, it really did not make a big difference with how the results finished. But there's no doubt that 2024 is a huge year for CSU. You've got, week 1 at Texas, that's going to be probably a rough one, just being realistic, but hopefully you can be competitive similarly to, when you went down to Tuscaloosa back in 2013 and 2017. Both of those games were pretty competitive, and, you're playing the number 1 team in the country back then. Hung pretty well in both games against Arkansas. So I'm interested to see, I guess, like how well the Rams are able to kind of hang with that team. It's going to be hot as hell. Afternoon kickoff on August 31st in Texas. Didn't seem like the best idea to me, but that game's on ESPN. Then you come back, you've got Ag Day against Northern Colorado. We'll find out what happens there. And then, a huge opportunity with the biggest showdown. I don't know, probably since like 2003. I think that was the last time both teams were ranked in the game. Weirdly enough, the last 5 times there was a ranked team and the other team was not. It was the unranked team that won, at least before this past year. So we'll see. We'll see. It's undoubtedly, going to be kind of a circus. You just even in the Toyota chat and seeing the back and forth between CSU and CU fans, like it's going to get real chaotic, just like it did before last year, after last year, with all the, Blackburn and Travis Hunter chaos and everything that went into that. But like I said at the beginning, before I got kind of sidetracked trying to respond to some of the comments, it's ultimately a situation like you don't really care why the game is on CBS if you're CSU. It's an opportunity to showcase your campus in a primetime window on, a major national outlet like CBS Saturday football. That's what I associate with college football growing up, like hearing that SEC jingle. I know they don't have the SEC contract anymore, but there's no doubt that this is just a huge opportunity. Nobody in the world gave CSU a chance to, compete with CU last year. They should have won the game. Like Buffs fans watching it, they know. The Ram fans let it slip through their fingers. Shador was great down the stretch, and, Mo getting ejected for targeting proved to be a pretty big factor because they could not block him to save their life. Now you have an opportunity in front of your home fans, in front of a national TV audience. Millions are going to be tuned in. I mean, it's a huge chance for this CSU program and really the season as a whole. Like you've got 7 home games, both of your major rivalries, Wyoming and CU, they're both going to be in Fort Collins. You're playing a lot of first-year programs. Like you have to strike while the iron's hot. You've got Torrey Horton back. You've got BFN back. You like the offensive talent that you have, in terms of the skill positions. You go out and add a former 4-star receiver and Armani Winfield, who's really intriguing, big dude. You bring Donovan Ollie over from Washington State and Cincinnati, another 6'2", 215 plus receiver. That's, we've seen firsthand. He had 2 touchdowns against CSU in that game in Pullman a couple years back. So it's a huge season, no doubt about it. I don't think there's ever been a bigger spotlight on the rivalry, on college football in the state, at least, in the last 20 plus years. It's been a long, long time. We got a question from Taylor here. Do you plan on having John Weber on the show sometime this summer? Would be really cool. I'll hit him up. Yeah, I've been meaning to get him on. It's been a little bit chaotic behind the scenes at CSU. They've had a lot going on. This was obviously the expected move. I mean, going back to the day he was named interim athletic director, I said I'd be shocked if he doesn't get the long-term job, probably even before the end of the school year. It didn't end up technically being the end of the school year, but we got it before summer. It's going to be fun to see what he and Amy Parsons are able to build here at CSU. It's neat to see such institutional support for athletics at CSU. It's good to see some excitement back within the program, to see the fans re-engaged, to see him, it sounds simple, but just bringing a little bit of optimism and excitement to the picture. Like it's not that crazy. I don't know. I'm really interested to see how it all plans out. I definitely cannot wait for that Rocky Mountain Showdown in Fort Collins. I've been following this rivalry my entire life, significantly longer than anybody kind of trolling in the chat. And honestly, I can talk more history about your team than you can. That said, you got to step up when these opportunities happen. Like CU, they have not historically wanted to come to Fort Collins very often. If you step up and play well against them, like they're not going to want to sign up for many more opportunities in the future. I know we've got the agreement after we go off for a couple years after this game. We'll go back to Boulder, back to Fort Collins, back to Boulder, back to Fort Collins for a couple years. It's just great to have these games back on campus. It was an electric atmosphere in Boulder last year. I will say there's a part of me that misses some of the chaos of Denver. It was cool to have like 30,000 plus from each side all in one stadium, and like, you know, going back and forth, it could certainly get pretty nasty and chippy at times, but college sports are better on college campuses. And it was a blast in Folsom last year. The backdrop was gorgeous. The atmosphere was insane. It's going to be just as fun in Fort Collins this year, and I cannot wait. And we'll see what happens. You know, a lot of cocky folks over there in the cult of Deion, but you know, we'll see. We'll see. Shout out to everybody in the Toyota chat. Much love to all of you, Ram fans, even the Buffs fans that just watched a 45-minute CSU show. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for the views, y'all. Much love. Peace.
We all silly like